Tiger King is a Netflix miniseries that follows the trials and tribulations of controversial zoo owner and current prisoner Joe Exotic. The documentary was coincidentally released as the COVID-19 virus was intensifying. As a result, millions of quarantined individuals watched the series in unison, launching Joe Exotic and his peers to unexpected fame and notoriety. But the 7-part documentary leaves out many important details. These are things you didn't know about Tiger King. While Joe Exotic has become a household name from the Tiger King documentary, it was not his first brush with fame. He was featured on a 2011 program produced by famed British documentarian Louis Theroux. After the release of Tiger King, Theroux took to Instagram to share his experience with Mr. Exotic. The most troubling thing he said was probably that if the park went bankrupt, he would kill all the animals, Theroux commented. Describing the moment he first met the star, Louis thought Joe was a rather likable character and revealed it was hard to dislike the zookeeper. I warmed to him, and his ridiculousness was endearing rather than annoying. He added, still as awful as the practice is, and despite the many compromises and cruelties entailed in Joe's running of the GW Zoo, it was hard to dislike the man himself. Louis said maybe it was because he didn't hide many of his misdeeds, or take himself too seriously. The journalist described Exotic as an emotional dude, and said that he attempted to shut down the documentary a few times as he was worried about the angle filmmakers were going for. I recall he was crying and then he took off his mic at one point and stomped off, and then he came back, Theroux added. Theroux also says he finds it very unlikely that the allegations surrounding Exotic's rival Carole Baskin, that she murdered her husband and fed his body to tigers, are true. Joe Exotic is now serving 22 years in prison. He was convicted of falsifying wildlife records, violating the Endangered Species Act, and hiring a man to kill Carole Baskin, who was a rival that operated her own big cat animal park. The murder for hire was never completed, but Joe Exotic is still paying for setting it up. Now there's also the accusation that Joe Exotic faked cancer for a period of time. As revealed via Twitter, Joe Exotic once told people he was battling prostate and bone marrow cancer. This was accompanied by a photo of Joe Exotic with a badly scabbed face and an oxygen tube in a hospital bed, which he said came from Joe Exotic himself. According to Moore, the motive behind this was to make money, even going so far as to raise funds from fans on Facebook. In reality, Exotic never had cancer, but had actually been suffering from a prostate infection, dehydration, and a herpes outbreak. Joe Exotic does have a fairly lengthy list of supposed health issues. In a video posted to his own YouTube channel in 2015, Exotic refuted claims that he had tuberculosis, revealing he had tested positive, but further tests and scans revealed he was in the clear. In that same video, he discusses having CVID, a treatable immune deficiency, and that he had surgery for the aforementioned prostate cancer, but became septic afterward. The cancer claim remains unproven either way, but discussing health issues isn't uncommon for Joe. Tiger King star Doc Antle has recalled his memories of working with Britney Spears after he provided the big cats for the singer's memorable performance at the 2001 VMAs. Antle, a prominent big cat trainer, made a brief cameo during the performance after Britney walked out from a cage in which he was sitting with one of the tigers. Following the meteoric success of Netflix's Tiger King, vintage photos began resurfacing, showing exotic animal handlers tending to an enormous chained tiger as a scantily clad Britney prepared to take the stage nearly 20 years ago. She was such a darling, totally just a fanatic person wanting a perfect performance, Doc told ET's Lauren Zima. We were there for several days rehearsing, so the tigers would be relaxed and happy to be out there, and that everything could be smooth and taken care of as best as possible. He added, she was there rehearsing and working, just the hardest working, sweetest young girl, out there making all the pieces click together. Spears has yet to comment on her experience with Mr. Antle, and while Antle believes Spears knows of his exotic animal park, Myrtle Beach Safari, he doesn't expect the pop star to be stopping by anytime soon. Right now, I'm sure with the Hollywood vibe, she'd be afraid that it's on fire with all this crazy, salacious insanity that's been made into Tiger King, he said. According to the Myrtle Beach Safari website, the safari owner also worked as an animal handler on movies including Ace Ventura, Dr. Dolittle, Mighty Joe Young, and The Jungle Book. A huge plot point in the Tiger King series is the disappearance of Carole Baskin's first husband, Don Lewis. In 1997, Carole's former husband Don Lewis went missing without a trace. He was 60 years old at the time. Carole reported him missing, and 2 days later, Don's van was found at an airport. In the wake of Tiger King's popularity, Carole hops online and denies claims she had anything to do with Don's disappearance, writing in a blog post, Tiger King has a segment devoted to suggesting, with lies and innuendo from people who are not credible, that I had a role in the disappearance of my husband Don 21 years ago. The series presents this without any regard for the truth, or in most cases even giving me an opportunity before publication to rebut the absurd claims. They did not care about truth. The unsavory lies are better for getting viewers. Sheriff Chad Chronister from Hillsborough County in Florida tells the New York Times that they still have Dawn's disappearance labeled a missing persons case, and that they don't have any type of evidence, not one piece, that suggests he was killed. Apparently, a sequel to Tiger King is already in the works, and it all centers on the disappearance of Dawn Lewis. None of the main characters in Tiger King came out in a particularly good light. Both Joe Exotic and Doc Antle appear to be hardened criminals, and many of their associates, like Jeff Lowe, seem like veritable psychopaths. But the jury is largely out on Carole Baskin. Many people believe she is a murderer, while others think she is innocent. She and her husband both released lengthy statements to refute the information included in the Netflix documentary. According to her husband Howard, the filmmakers approached the couple with the intention of making a big cat equivalent to Blackfish, the documentary about orca whales in captivity that led to a tangible backlash against SeaWorld. In reality, Howard said, their only goal was to make something as salacious and inflammatory as possible. Anyone who spends an hour with Carole would come away knowing she in no way had any involvement in Dawn's disappearance, and that the vicious rumors that were spread by his family are absolute nonsense, Howard said. Michael Jackson was known for his outlandish taste and interest in exotic animals, famously owning and traveling with Bubbles, his chimpanzee, for a period of time in the 1980s. The King of Pop also had his own private zoo at the Neverland Ranch, the inhabitants of which included tigers, snakes, and primates. Now it appears a link between Jackson and another wild animal enthusiast, Joe Maldonado Passage, aka Joe Exotic, might have been uncovered. Tiger King star John Finlay has claimed the alligators that perished in Joe Exotic's zoo fire belonged to Michael Jackson. Footage shown in the documentary sees Exotic discussing a blaze at his zoo. He said the animals involved were boiling alive in a towering inferno. Finlay said, "My favorite animals were the alligators and crocodiles. A previous manager had gotten Michael Jackson's alligators from the Neverland Ranch. We got some other ones from friends and stuff. They were the ones I really took care of most of the time." An easy highlight of Tiger King is the musical interludes with Joe's songs. Who could forget Here Kitty Kitty, about Carole Baskin feeding her husband to the tigers? However, it's all a lie. Apparently, Joe didn't write or sing his own songs. The illusion is shattered. TMZ reveals how Joe simply lip-syncs along to songs written and performed by the Clinton Johnson Band. Band member Vince Johnson told the site he's been inundated with calls since Tiger King soared to the top of Netflix's viewing charts, but as of yet, none have been from record labels. Sadly, the passing of Danny Clinton in October means the Clinton Johnson Band might never get to realize how famous it could have been. Johnson confirmed they'd recorded 3 albums before Clinton's passing, and no, not all of them are cat-related. He went on to confirm the band got brought into Joe's wild world to write a theme song for him, but inadvertently ended up sticking around and penning around 20 songs for the larger-than-life big cat lover. Saf Safari was the even-tempered manager at Joe Exotic Zoo, and the straight man to this cast of characters. Safari is introduced to us early in the series with footage of a brutal attack by a tiger after he put his arm in the animal's cage. Safari is given the option of 2 years of reconstructive surgeries or amputation, and he chooses amputation so he can get back to the big cats, which he does just days after leaving the hospital. In a statement to the Daily Mail in 2013, he expressed how he took full responsibility for what happened to him. "I broke protocol and stuck my hand in a cat cage instead of using the stick provided," the statement read. "The cat let go and pushed my arm back through the cage. The tiger was not aggressive toward me." On his LinkedIn page, Safari's profile indicates that he is still working as a Greater Wynwood Zoo park manager. Saf is transgender and no longer goes by Kelsey. According to Intelligencer, after his cub breeding program began, Joe set his sights on the biggest of the big cats. While visiting another zoo in 2003, Joe Exotic had his first experience with a liger, the result of breeding a tiger and a lion. Ligers can grow much larger than either parent species, a sure draw for crowds. Joe wouldn't settle for anything so simple, though. He wanted something even more alluring, a cat that no one else in the world possessed. Despite scientists' assertions that it is biologically impossible to do so, Joe wanted to breed a saber-toothed tiger. Joe Exotic's saber-tooth plan is worthy of its own Tiger King sequel. He bred the liger mentioned previously with another lion, thus creating a liger. Joe continued this practice until his animals were gargantuan in size. It seems that Joe believed this process of breeding would result in the resurrection of the ultimate Tiger King. There are a lot of problems with Joe's logic, including the fact that saber-toothed cats are genetically far removed from the big cats alive today. One of the more down-to-earth characters in Tiger King is former manager John Reinke. Before joining Joe Exotic at his petting zoo, Reinke was a bungee jumper. In April 1994, he was testing a bungee jump ride in Burke Burnett, Texas, when a pulley malfunctioned. Reinke fell a terrifying 55 feet. Not only did he bounce on landing, something that crushed his legs, he then landed on a 6-inch metal stake that pierced both his colon and stomach. He was stuck, bleeding heavily but still able to speak. I kept asking them to get my wife, Christy, but they wouldn't, he told the Oklahoman. If they had, I don't think I'd be here today. I was ready to tell her goodbye. Over the next couple of years, Reinke had to undergo more than 20 operations on his feet and legs and had to use a wheelchair to get around during that time. He learned to walk again after realizing he could move his big toe, but in 2006, surgeons had to remove his left leg, meaning he had to figure out how to walk on a prosthetic leg. Rebecca Chaiklin and Eric Good have found tremendous success with Tiger King, but they say that while filming, they were careful never to take part in tiger cub petting. They said that they witnessed the cubs being abused firsthand. The babies were pulled away from their mothers screaming and quickly became sick with ringworm and mange from being handled too much. According to PETA, the series largely skips over serious issues of animal welfare, including the horrors of cub trafficking and the problems with commercial cub petting attractions. It's important to remember that most animals used as photo opportunities for tourists are drugged to keep them complacent, and they usually have an extremely low quality of life. This includes primates, elephants, and of course, tigers.